Hey, Lauren. Welcome to our show, our very own show. I just told you before I went on air, I have no idea what the hell I'm going to say as usual, but I do know what I'm going to say. And I'm going to start my rant
You
before
don't know, but you do know.
give you the floor. More layoffs. They keep happening to a lot of people around me. And I'm going to reiterate some advice I've been giving people. Don't sign your severance without negotiating. And also look around if you're laid off, if you're not laid off, and people around you are getting laid off. Look and see who's getting laid off, and if it's mostly women, people over 40, people of color. Ask yourself why that is, and structurally, is it a problem in your organization and something you should maybe speak out on? If customers you use, if this is happening in their company, and you're giving them money for a product, ask yourself these questions too. Like, ethics matter.
Absolutely. I think I think that second point you mentioned, obviously everything you said in the first point, like, yes, like, don't just sign an agreement. Don't just sign an agreement. Like, I run a business. I do well. As a business owner, like, I review every contract. I have a lawyer I pay to look at everything I sign. Don't ever sign anything
There's
without
no
reading
rush.
first, right? So, if someone's like, oh, today's your last day and here's your agreement, you're banned for 6 months from ever saying anything about this company or doing anything. Well, take it to a lawyer. That's just my general advice. To anybody out there, as those layoffs continue to happen, and we see, this week a number in the news. There's Meta stuff. Dropbox is a commodity. Dropbox kind of cracks me up because they've said, hey, we're going to be an AI company now, along with every other company. So I'm excited to see what they do there. See, if that's true or not. Pretty commoditized type of company. Not sure what they're going for, but hey, they laid off. I think I read it was 16% this morning.
Sorry, by the way, I hit some website. Were you guys hearing that crazy sound?
No, I didn't hear any crazy
Okay.
sound.
Okay,
Now I
keep
know you're
going.
surfing the web during our show, Mary.
No, something. I don't know. I clicked something. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, Dropbox. We'll see what happens there. And yeah, First Republic. Last month we had Silicon Valley Bank. We had a bunch of venture capitalists on Twitter cause a bank run. They say they didn't do it. They say, oh, it's the short sellers that did it. It's somebody else that did it. Well, a bunch of VCs kind of caused the bank run. And, VCs on Twitter are some of the most dangerous people in the world. So now First Republic, which is, First Republic's a bank. They've got a ton of offerings. Like, a lot of like high net worth people will bank there with their, personal banking. I know a couple of companies that I work with or invest in or do other things with. FDIC, we'll see what happens with it. The bank might go into receivership. I think another stack on the house of cards is collapsing with First Republic, and they've been pretty volatile since the Silicon Valley Bank thing last month. So we'll see what happens. And I'm excited for the show today. We've got the Super Data Brothers, Eric and Ryan, here. Mary, you and I were on their show a month or so ago, and we all know each other. We've been in the space for a while, and what we're going to do here in the second half of the show is also what we did last week, like open it up. We want to, have people who are in our audience or who may be, coming in every week or every couple of weeks. If there's something you want to say or ask us about or ask the general public about, if there's a soapbox you want to stand on, go stand on the soapbox. We'll open it up in the second half of the show to do another town hall thing, since a lot of people had fun with that last time we did it. And
Absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of great comments already today. And hello also to Val, who showed up for our town hall last week and made an appearance.
Yeah.
Let's bring in the Super Data Brothers, Ryan and Eric. Hey guys, you got
Hey,
your
hello.
We don't like to think of you as competitors. Just, fellow people who have their own show about data. Introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about the show and what you both do in your data/tech careers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sure. Go for it.
Yeah,
Eric.
so I'll go. Yeah, so I'm brother Eric Dolley. So I work at a university.
Sounds a bit cultish, right?
Yeah,
Hello. Brother Eric, Sister Mary. Yeah.
Bro Lauren, Bro Mary. I am brother Eric. Yeah, so I work at for university, Michigan State University, in their analytics department. So really on the front end BI side, and if you watched our show, I'm sure you've seen that me and Ryan are usually on the front end, user-facing BI side of the whole data stack. So that's kind of what I do in the workplace. And then as far as in the show goes, like Ryan's, as you'll see as we go on, Ryan will probably be talking a lot. I'll probably be talking a little less, but I'll still have some things to add in. And I'm more on the technical side. So whenever in the show we do like a deep dive on a tech product, like I think I did a quick site deep dive a couple of weeks ago. Like I'll usually be the one leading that one. Some of the more business stuff, Ryan will kind of take flight with that. So that's kind of our dynamic and kind of, how I sit in it.
I'm the bullshit brother, is what he said.
Oh, yeah.
Nicely.
Yeah.
Eric's
That's what I am in Mary and I's relationship.
we were actually making that comparison. We were actually making that comparison.
Right. Eric's the smarter and quieter one, like me.
Yes.
And just for the record, for viewers, Lauren and I are not actually siblings, unlike.
Oh, yes. Me and Ryan actually are brothers.
Yeah.
We're actual brothers. Yeah.
Yes.
Lauren and I are just bros.
Gotcha.
Good.
As Eric said, I'm the bullshit brother. I'm Ryan, and we do the show every Thursday. I think partially as a way to get stuff off our chest, but also to talk to interesting people. And then professionally, I do a lot of consulting. I will have a new professional endeavor to announce soon. I'll just lay the groundwork there, and we'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, and really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to hear about that down the line when you're ready to make your. Did you pick another show to make your big announcement on?
No. I guess actually this is the first time I've mentioned it at all.
No pressure.
Is on your show. So this is the official preview of that announcement, which I think.
But you don't have anything to show, so it's just vaporware.
It is vaporware, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I know that's your favorite type of.
It's a good time for me to pull out my, I've been beating the vaporware drum for a while. And, I'm gonna pull out my tinfoil. Everyone's getting the tinfoil hat. Yes.
Beautiful. Oh,
Lauren's tinfoil hat got so much attention last week that we decided
we're all doing it.
I thought I was gonna do mine as like a live crafting session, but I realized it takes like 3 seconds to make one of these. So.
Mary, before the show, Mary was like, we should do a tinfoil hat, like Martha Stewart style crafting thing. And I'm like, Mary, you literally just put the foil on your head.
Yeah, I like how everybody's is a little different. There's
yours looks so smooth though, Lauren. It looks
mine looks very smooth. Let me rough it up a little bit, make it look more worn. I was also thinking like
Lauren's had a lot of practice.
There's a world in which you could do like this is like a bandana or a do-rag, and you can put the hat on over it.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Well, since we've got this on, what Eric and Ryan, I'm curious, like what are the biggest things? And I do the tinfoil hat motif. I'll write about it in my blog, or I'll put it, on various things. And I'm like, hey, doesn't this seem a little wrong? And I think it's funny. I think some people take it way too seriously, and they're like, you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, that's the joke. What's the you guys you were at the data at the Gartner conference last month. You've seen the modern data world. You've seen, you work heavily in the Microsoft world. What's going on here? What's wrong right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing that has happened And I don't know if I'd say it's well, there's been this like sudden collision with reality in the last in the last 6 months, and part of that was visible at the Gartner conference when I was there, because it was like Gartner's message was a heavily Gartner-fied version of like, so you're gonna have to justify what you do now. And how are you going to do that, right? It was kind of like the enterprise version of that. So it was like, we have this new enterprise value equation, and like, here's how you should structure things. But it was very much like for many of you, for the first time in a decade, someone is going to actually ask why we're spending all this money on data scientists.
Yeah. So what would you say you do here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I actually don't know. I mean, it's a bad thing insofar as it's gonna cause bad things to happen to people. People losing their jobs, that sort of thing. That's bad. Having to justify what you do with like tangible results in reality is good. Right. So it's a mixed bag, right? I don't want anyone to lose their job, but it's nice that like there's a new focus in a lot of ways on like deliverables for data projects and like ROI and the era of like, maybe we're just going to hire all these PhDs, physics PhDs who took a coding class. And then value will magically appear out of it. Like, I think maybe it's a good thing that we're moving beyond that. But there's going to be pain on the way, and I'm not pro pain. But that was like one thing I definitely observed coming out of the Gartner conference, and of course, none of it was phrased that way, right? It's all in this enterprise IT bullshit speak, but that's what it meant.
How would someone say that in IT speak, in corporate IT speak? How would they say, "Ooh, rough times are coming. We may be slicing headcount. We may be buying less SaaS, less software"? How can our viewers know? How would they hear that in IT?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like, it'll be reframed in terms of like, we're going to be seeking some operational efficiencies this year in order to, and there's going to be a new focus on value. And what you should, if you hear that, what you should be hearing is about 40% of you are going to need to be preparing your resumes. That's kind of like what that sounds like. And it was also, there was like they had this interesting distinction that I don't know that I bought, but they were talking about like, the thing you need to do as a data team is like, there's what did they call it? Financial metrics. That's not exactly what they said, but that's basically, there's like financial metrics, the traditional financial metrics like ROI, like revenue and, balance sheet stuff.
Expenditure and everything like that, right?
And then they said there are financial influencing metrics like the brand value and the value of the data and the value of the way you do things. And that as a data practice, you need to transition to financial influencing metrics as like the main thing that you're pushing. And that sounds nice, but like, if you can't show how what you're doing contributes to boring old, they even had a chart of like balance sheet and revenue is like 1970s thinking, and like the value of our internal knowledge is 2020s thinking. And I was just thinking like, man, if you can't show that 1970s stuff, like you shouldn't really be worried about the 2020s stuff yet.
See, I always think about this type of stuff like the funnel. Everyone knows the funnel of like, we
got one on my head.
And then marketing turns into sales.
Yeah.
And then sales, there's a funnel, right? The tinfoil hat funnel. Well, like, you have your marketing funnel, your sales funnel, and then people start using your product because they buy it or install it or download it or whatever. Then you've got user metrics and customer success, blah, blah, blah. And I think the farther you are away from like, I don't know, the purchase order or the transaction or anything else, like the worse off you are. And I've been pretty like adamant about that through my career. Like if you're measuring something that will lead to something, that will lead to something, that will lead to the sale or the transaction or whatever, like your data work is like 3 layers up from what matters. And if you're like, product analytics have a ton of value. But like, I don't know, if you're like doing like your 170th analysis in product analytics and it's to how to re-engage like 12 people somewhere and, you spent like a week doing it, like, well, that's also kind of far away from, what's generating revenue. So like, I don't know. My opinion is the closer you are to that order, the transaction, whatever your business is like measured on, the better off you are as a data person, data scientist, analyst, engineer, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we were at Data Day Texas in January, which was a really cool conference. In large part because it was like a single day and it was on a weekend and it was priced at a level that, and this is on purpose, that you can afford to pay for it out of your own pocket. So you don't have to get your boss's permission to go. And that alone like gave it a different vibe. And it wasn't like vendor focused or anything. It was pretty cool. Even the vendor people who were there, their talks were like not at all about why you should buy their stuff.
Didn't even mention their tool at all, essentially.
Yeah. But one thing that happened while we were there is they did like a community forum thing, and Bill Inman, father of the data warehouse, was like, over the course of my career, if I couldn't explain how what I was doing either got customers or kept customers or saved money, I was pretty worried.
Right.
And I think a lot of people in that room couldn't do that. They were like, well, I do ML ops stuff, and it's like, I'm here to make the model's deployment faster. And it's like, okay, how does that explain how that leads to customer retention or increased efficiency or new sales? Well, I don't know. Right.
And like, I talk about this, I've been talking about this for over a year, and like, many people ask me, they're like, oh, well, how do I learn this stuff, right? And I'm like, well, like, if you just want to start and like learning stuff, like look up corporate finance and look, like, there's like textbooks that like you can buy a used college textbook or buy an online version or get a free one somewhere and learn how your business operates. And like within day to day, like, I'm someone who's been pushy in my career, especially when I was younger in my 20s. Like I would want to know, like, what is my boss worried about? Like what's, back when I was, just an individual contributor type of analyst or data engineer, like push it, ask those questions. And like, if you can't get a good answer, or like, I don't know, something seems a little cagey, maybe it is time to brush up your resume. But I'm also curious here, Eric. Like
Sure.
you work at Michigan State. I almost said Michigan.
Hey, no, it's all good.
Like how much of this are you seeing in like an academic, like public sector job with Michigan State? Being a public university, like these things that us crazy business people who, talk about return on capital expenditure and the balance sheet, like. How much of that are you seeing in your space, like working in like the public sector?
To be honest, basically none of it, right? Like, especially because at a university we're part government, so we're somewhat insulated from that. But I think not just public, but I think a lot of like there are all these layoffs happening and all of that, and people are focused on that. But there are still a lot of companies who, all these big tech companies, they've been like leading the wave, right? But there are a lot of smaller waves coming, right? In other companies that are just starting to ramp up on this sort of thing, right? Like Ryan, like on our show, we've been talking about like the what do we call it? Not the pipeline of analytics, the
supply chain
of analytics, right? That era is over, and for a lot of companies, that era is almost just beginning,
right?
Right. So who knows? Maybe they can skip over that. But as far as all that we're seeing, like it's not really infiltrating that company. And like a lot of these people who are like worried about their jobs and stuff, like all these data scientists are getting laid off. But I think there's not going to be just a glut of data scientists. I think they're going to land somewhere, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of companies, they're just starting to like get into this world. And now that it's become basically easy enough to do for like a normal company to get into it. So like that's what I foresee is that like all these data scientists, like they're not working at Facebook, they're working at General Motors, or they're working at a brake manufacturer for General Motors or something
Yeah.
like that. Car examples. I live in Michigan, so
Yeah, right. Detroit area.
Right.
Keeping
We
it
even made
real.
that pitch like when we were down at
Yeah,
Beta
yeah,
Day.
we did.
We got up and said, "Hey, if you just got laid off by the company whose sole purpose in existence is to convince people to devote more of their lives to this thing, why don't you come up here to Detroit and like help us build better electric motors?" Now,
Yeah.
I will admit, pitching moving to Detroit is kind of a hard thing to do in most parts of the country, but we
Yeah,
tried.
and like, you got all the EV people down in Austin too with Tesla and everything.
Yeah.
They're not going to go up to the combustible engine center of Michigan. Maybe
Those
they
people can
will.
go work for Lauren too. Lauren's hiring at $240 an hour, from what I heard over on
Yeah,
Twitter.
I put a roll up.
Although I
It's a
would
cool
I would
thing.
guess it's not the data science PhDs that you're looking for. I bet it's more practically minded folk who have. Not saying the PhDs can't have that. Some of them do.
Mhm.
I know Shantona is watching. She's a PhD. She's good. But people who are more focused on the business, right?
The more focused you are on my whole thing, and I mean, I don't really want to plug myself on the show. That's not what our show's about. But I'm always looking for people to partner with and work with me, and I've got a couple of big deals coming up, and if you can talk to business people and you can talk to like what needs to be done, and do they know what a customer is? Do they know what the identifier of a customer is? Do you know your customer lifetime value? Do you know who you need to re-engage? Like if you have 10 million customers lifetime, like what does that mean? Maybe 2 million of them can be re-engaged. All right, let's figure out how to re-engage them. Like what are we doing? Like are we re-engaging them on Facebook ads? Is this a B2C company where that's how they came in to begin with? Are we re-engaging them a different way? Are you 100 million customer business? Are you using outside CDPs? Like knowing the business around all this is like, I can teach a business person who knows SQL anything else they need to know about all this technical stuff and cloud infrastructure and whatever. Like if you know SQL and you know the business, it's easier, in my experience, usually to teach you to go a little bit further back and figure stuff out than it is to teach, someone who like hates talking to the business, but like, knows, some algorithms and knows some, this is when you use this database, but not another one. Like, and there's a trade-off, but like, it's always easier for me to teach a good business-minded person, ops person, make them a bit more technical than it is to like go the other way. So that's what Mary was referring to. I'm looking for some new people or whatever. But
I have a question I want to ask whoever wants to answer it. And while I'm listening, I'm going to step away to grab my computer charger, which I did not get before the show. I was thinking that I could transmit enough energy through the hat. Apparently that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But so the question is this step towards reality that Ryan eloquently described that's happening in maybe in companies and in terms of data being something that's actually, tied to reality, to bringing real business outcomes, motivated now maybe by the economic climate. But my question is, ultimately that's a good thing, right? But why did we end up in the reality that we're in now, which is disconnected from reality? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I would,
and I'm stepping away, but listening.
I would start by just throwing out, I think Lauren had a very eye-opening, like you wrote a blog post and then one of the early Tech Bros shows that I watched, where it was very clarifying for me, where it was like, well, part of it was that you could borrow a lot of money for nothing, and that drove a lot of, it's a lot easier to be speculative or decide to hear that your competitor just hired 25 data scientists, so you're going to go hire 25 of your own, which is a story I heard at Gartner, without any plan for what to do with them, when the money you're borrowing is like free, versus when it's at 6%. Suddenly the economic calculus is very different. And so I think that was a part of it. And also, and I think Joe Reese has talked about this a little bit, and that is like, there was a little bit of a data science rabbit hole that we went down, where it was like, we're just going to do data science stuff, and like, we're not going to really worry about, like, the value will just bubble up out of the data science. It's hard to do, so it must be valuable, right? And I'm not knocking data science; it's really important. But the rest of it, the operationalization, the like, how do we get actual numbers in front of the people to actually do something different out in meat space? That wasn't as big a focus for a while. So I give actually Lauren a lot of credit for helping to clarify some of my thinking around that.
Yeah, it was just the hype towards data.
Interest rates control everything.
It's crazy. And you start thinking like that, and then you turn into like the Federal Reserve and blah, blah, blah.
Like, I'm an economist, like, by my degree. I studied economics at a pretty good school, and I, done projects on this stuff. I'm not an expert. I'm not a PhD, but like, I mean, like, if you look at when interest rates are zero, anyone who's managing money needs to park their money somewhere where they can make a return. And so they invest in riskier stuff because there's less downside risk. And then, when interest rates go up, well, okay, we can't really do that anymore. And so that's what drives a lot of this. And, it's not the full story, but it's a lot of the story. And not only is it a lot of the story, but like, you look at these different vendors out here, and, some data vendor that does a thing, whatever it is, I don't know, observability, BR, whatever, doesn't matter. Let's say they have 30 customers. Okay, well, who are your 30 customers? Well, it's all other VC-backed companies. All right, so how are they paying for your solution? Whatever it is, how are they paying for it? Paying you whatever it is a month, whether it's $99 a month all the way up to a full enterprise contract that you've signed, and you pay for a year up front and blah, blah, blah. And while the answer is that company itself is also VC backed, because all this money went into venture capital. So this, Shopify store that sells socks on the internet, it wouldn't have existed without all that VC money. Or it would have existed, but it would have been like very small. And the reason that they're bloated and bigger and buying data stuff is because they're spending so much money on ads, and because they're spending all this, money on different employees doing this, that, and stuff, this, that, and the other, and all this VC money. Maybe the company could have just, been profitable and been 5 people, but they got the VC money, and now they're 50 people selling socks on the internet. And if they have 50 people, I bet 20 of them want dashboards. Well, if they want some if you give a mouse a cookie, the mouse wants some milk. If you give the mouse some milk, then the mouse wants the next thing. So, this is all the return. And I don't know, like, I'm pretty critical of a lot of the stuff out there, but I think that like the basic principles, like OLAP should be denormalized. We're talking about data stuff here. You shouldn't have too many crazy models. You shouldn't have 5,000. You shouldn't have more dashboards than there are people at the company. That's not like hard and fast, but like, think about how many people are at your company and like how much analysis you're doing. Maybe you only need like 1 analyst, or you need 1 good person to kind of run everything, not like 5. And, the other thing here is like, how much actual like return are you getting? Like, back to Ryan's point earlier, like, how much are you spending on this stuff, right? Like, are you spending a ton of money on Google ads, and then you went and bought Google Cloud Platform to run some compute and run some analysis to tell you how much you save on Google ads. Like you're like, oh, we saved all this money on Google ads. All right, well, how'd you figure that out? Oh, well, we got, Looker, this Google product, and we got, Google cloud computing. We hired a data scientist to run it all for us, to tell us how to save money on Google. We use all these Google products.
We're spending $120K a year on BigQuery to run the compute. Yeah.
Right, to tell you how to save money on Google. This is the
Mm-hmm.
So we do have this move towards reality, which is ultimately a good thing, even if jobs are being lost in the process. Good people will find jobs again. They're out there. Just maybe pivot the types of companies you're targeting, pivot your skills a little bit, pivot your approach, and become more business minded. And then at the same time, we have this other trend happening, which is obviously the new hype cycle around AI and ChatGPT in the comments. And Stoltzman, who's at Rivian, she's a former colleague from Malwarebytes, said that, she obviously sees this happening. Now companies are thinking AI ChatGPT is the next big thing, which, we've basically talk about in every show now. Yeah. I'm going to put the link into in the comments for anyone who wants to join in live. Just do it and we'll bring you into the studio. No pressure. Go ahead, Ryan.
Are you doing it on YouTube or are you doing it on LinkedIn or both?
Both.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to open up the town hall. And so anyone who wants to join us here, rant or chat about anything or whatever, let's do it.
And in the meantime, we'll just read some of the comments. Val, who was here last week, said that what everyone's describing is what he certainly encountered in his corporate time. You'd think businesses would realize they need to get more efficient now, but what happens is they sacked a lot of analysts, but did not switch to automation. They just keep on doing the same things, just fewer of them. He comes across companies like that about once a month. So yeah, times are changing, but it's like a rough changing time. Josh Gallant says he's going to head to the library for a copy of Business Finance for Dummies, which is probably where everybody's data education should start. Claire Longo has a question. She says, do you all think quantifying the project, she said POI, I'm assuming she means ROI, should be the job of the data scientist, product managers, or team leaders? What have you seen work in the past? That's a great question.
I think everyone.
Yeah, anyone who wants to keep their job.
Yeah, am I going to go spend, this much of my time to do this and spend this much on compute costs and this much on this product? And what are we going to get out of it? And there's you can do a finger in the air, stick, lick your finger and put it in the wind, and you can come close, like a good example of this that I like to call is call out around customer data is around RFM, recency, frequency, monetary, versus doing all these advanced data science algorithms and stuff. And for a lot of companies, if they know what customers and they segment it out, who bought most recently, when was the today minus the last time the customer purchased something successfully or purchased it without returning it or whatever you want to call it. Recency, frequency, is this a customer that bought once? Are they a customer that bought a bunch of times? Monetary, what's the value of what they're buying? What products are they buying? And you can tie this to if you're in a marketplace, GMV, gross merchandise value. If you're, at a, typical retail store, you can tie it to order contribution margin. You can tie it to, just gross revenue, whatever. And basically segment out your customers, algebraically and figure that out. And a lot of companies do this. If they want to do stuff more in depth, we need a data science team to do all these algorithms and blah, blah, blah. If you only have 2 million customers, 2 million human beings, and you're selling $99 or less, shoes and socks and whatever, kombucha, whatever it is you sell, it's probably not worth it. It's probably not worth it to do that extra step. Now, if you have 20 million customers, which is a good amount, or, you have 33 million customers in the US, which is 10% of the US population, give or take, by the way. So you're a large company, then it might be worth it to do it to you. But, if you're small, like, you got to do these it's called Fermi estimation, if you want to look that up, or, thinking about it in a Fermi style, like, how big is my problem? And stick that finger into the wind. That's my rant on that. We got to have people join. Who's like, we had people on last
we've got apparently they're scared of Ryan and Eric. They weren't scared or maybe it's like the force of the hats pushing people.
Yeah, they're all getting their tinfoil hats ready before they're running to their kitchens.
We had a good comment here that's very Lauren Ballas-esque. That's hard to say, from Brent Brewington. He said, learn how the business financially operates by doing this. Grab lunch with your finance, accounting, or executive people and ask for and explain it like I'm 5 perspective, which is great. We should all really truly understand the businesses we work for. Solomon Khan says RFM and other quick heuristics are also super useful.
My very first job when I started out in data, which would have been 12 years ago, I was at a power company in Madison, Wisconsin. And what they did that was extremely helpful, that I wish more companies would do, is your first 3 days, no matter what role you were taking, you went through a how do we make money class at the corporate HQ. Because it's actually, most people haven't thought about it at all. And then the second you start to, if you know anything about electricity, it's actually not obvious how you make money, right? It's not like I can mail you electricity that just goes to your house if you're my customer, It's like, it's really very complicated because the electrons get dumped onto the grid and you don't actually control where they go. As long as all the electrical companies and plants together generate enough electricity, then everybody's lights will come on. And then there's this complicated financial process of determining who gets paid what for their contribution to that process. And it actually was really helpful on the data team because we actually understood, like, how does this company earn a profit, And it made it a lot easier to do kind of the finger in the wind thing, to say, like, okay, is this contributing to lowering fuel costs or improving plant efficiency? Or, and I met my wife at this job. She was, then it becomes a financial game, right? Because it's like there's all these nodes on the electrical grid, and all the companies are hedging the nodes with financial products, and all this.
The whole thing runs.
The whole thing is arbitrage. Yes.
Right. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, but it actually helped, And I think, like, I wish more companies would do that, where, like, your first day on the job, you were at least made to watch a YouTube video or an internal Loom video of, like, here's how we actually earn a profit here at this place. Because I think a lot of people don't really know, especially data people, especially the ones that you talked about earlier, Lauren, who, like, don't want to talk to the business people and just want to focus on solving the neat logic problems. They have no idea how the company earns money, I feel like.
Or some of them do, but they're like, well, we don't earn money, so I'm just going to shut up and stay over here.
Well, that's a big part of it, too.
Like, they're just kind of zombie companies that are propped up by, like, venture capital firms that don't want to show a loss.
Yeah.
So just keep getting more.
I think what you're describing, Ryan, is an onboarding issue across the board. I think for people in any department within organizations, like that's an issue. But also, particularly with data people, it goes back to the lack of business sense kind of being ingrained in training, whatever training people do from the beginning. And then, like, a personality thing, like, I find that people who go into data tend to be, diligent in their work, but they like things to fit into rows and columns, and they like themselves to fit into a row and column. I'm in this part of the company and I stay here. And I was actually just in a Twitter conversation a little while ago with some data people who are chatting about negotiating, how uncomfortable they are with negotiating salary, which is that's like a business skill ultimately, right? And which I totally relate to, and it's also something that as women we're not socialized to do. So there's other challenges, but like that's part of learning how to be in a business. And
you just never act like you're never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
They could give you the biggest raise in your life, and you're like, okay.
That's what I do too.
Right,
that's the key.
But I mean, I won't say the names, and they wouldn't mind me saying it. But like they were saying, we don't negotiate, and
Oh yeah.
Or negotiations we've tried haven't worked, which I deeply sympathize with. But like I'm the least salesy person ever, and I learned how to do it. And in 12 years I've never accepted an offer without negotiating it and getting a significant bump. Like you've got to learn the business. Skills. Period.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that a lot of like technical people and junior people and anyone else needs to understand is like, where do they sit on the budget? Like where do they actually sit? And like a couple ways of breaking this down are like, am I in sales and marketing, which is like S&M, and you can look these up. When you look up basics of corporate finance, like we mentioned earlier, there's tons of books and tons of stuff out there you can find. Are you in S&M, sales and marketing? Are you on the G&A budget, general administrative? Are you in R&D budget, where it's just where a lot of developers are, but not necessarily like data developers or data science? I think that pulling that conversation into like your interview or like a last round interview is important. And I would suggest that of anybody. But we've got a guest coming on for the town hall. So
Anne is here. Anne, welcome. Anne and I used to be colleagues back at Malwarebytes, so we'd meet like this on stand-ups most mornings. So welcome to Tech Bros, Anne. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk about that point about, how do we make money? How does a company make money? And to your point, the data analyst who wants to sit in a box. The focus that have been, bringing women into STEM, bringing men up into data, there's been such a focus on computer programming. You have to know this language. You have to know this data visualization suite. You have to have this skill. I just went through looking for a job, as Mary knows, after Malwarebytes laid me off. And, the amount of job descriptions that you get, that's, no Python, no Java, no, SQL, be able to do this thing and this thing and this thing. And so little of it is focused on understanding how a business operates in general. That's great. All the technical, this. And I've seen it interviewing people too. When I ask them a general question about, how would you deal with this business situation? How would you evaluate, what you're looking at this, we have this new product that's coming in, and, we have to think about development costs. We have to think about packaging costs. How would you look at that? And they're like, is that data in a table that I can parse? And I'm like, do you understand what kind of data I'm even talking about? They're not even teaching that at the college levels, that anybody who's getting into this kind of computer programming, visualization, data world should be required to take basic business classes, basic economics, to understand this. I have a degree in business and economics. It's focused on financial instruments. I understand how businesses run. I took law courses for this kind of thing. I fell into data visualization and being a data engineer through the course of my career. It's not what I set out to do. It's what I ended up doing. It's what I love to do. Mary can attest to that. I am a passionate data nerd. But I would not have survived or gotten as far as I have in the roles that I have been in without having that background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm curious to ask you, I don't want to lead you on this question here, but what I've seen in the last, couple of years is all these job descriptions out there, list the languages and they list the stuff. And because there's so many applicants, how do you, figure out who candidate A from B from C and blah, 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 and who gets to this round and that round and whatever. What I've seen is the mastery of the language is what becomes more popular as this like data world, data jobs, whatever, visualization analyst, engineer, whatever. It turns more into this like game of listing off languages and chest thumping about the specific thing in this language. How do we get better than that? Like how do we move past that? Like to get back to driving value when there's like 8 different languages on a resume, or 8 languages and 2 viz tools and whatever.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to come into more of a social aspect of interviewing, I guess. We have these resumes, and there are whole businesses and corporations built around how to, craft the right resume and write the right resume. And it, highlights this thing or that thing. And I think part of that's going to be, there needs to be a change in how that's viewed in the way that your resume is written. More forward, I did such and such project, transpolated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, how about having business crafted language? I drove this project forward. I hate saying that, but I drove this project forward by, understanding, X, Y, and Z that resulted in X% of profit, or contribution to this particular thing that, moved the needle forward for this. It's that kind of language. Now, when you get pure engineering managers that just want to know language, that's great. I can take a boot camp and I'll know dick about all these languages because I've never used them in practical purpose. I understand Python. I have never used it practically in my job. Although people see Python on my resume and go, oh, great, you're a Python developer. No, I'm not. I understand how to use it, but I have never used it practically. But here's what I can tell you about this part of the business or this part of the business or this part of the business, and I'll get that skill up. I think there needs to be, and there's no shame in companies wanting the people who know the languages and to hit the ground running and build the tables and ingest the data. But I think there needs to be more focus on employers who say, I know you understand this concept of the business. We can bring you up in the language because you'll learn that as you do the job.
Sure.
And I've been fortunate enough in my last 2 jobs, I got hired at Malwarebytes because I have a significant experience in data visualization, but I didn't know the products they were using. I had a wealth of experience in Tableau. I'd never used Looker and Domo. As Mary can tell you, I became the Looker and Domo expert.
I know you offered to teach me Looker and I didn't take you up on it, which I
see. There you go.
Yeah.
I'll still buy that, even though I don't have access to the product anymore.
Well, we have a question here from Andy for the group here. I have my answer, but I'll let somebody else answer this first. Andy says, do you think VPs and managers purposefully gatekeep this business knowledge from data staff?
In some situations that I've been in, yes, I think they do. It could be partially because they don't want you digging deeper into those insights of what are they really trying to hide? Because I've been in that kind of company where I went, hey, wait a second, I found this in this table.
Yeah, I found fraud at companies before. Like what was clearly fraud. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And I think part of it is it's the culture of the C-suite where they go, we are the guys that are in the know. And when you have the data, people are going, but wait a minute, I have this question about this, or I have this question about this. You don't necessarily always have the openness in that suite that wants to discuss that with you because we're picking at the little crumbs in the carpet while they're floating at the 50,000-foot view.
What do you think, Ryan or Eric? Do you think that like certain like VPs or managers purposefully gatekeep business knowledge from data staff?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe all y'all should start working at a university because if you don't know what's going on, you just send a FOIA request and they'll tell you. So
that's true.
But like I am like a little bit insulated from that side of things to a degree. So What do you
I mean,
think,
I've
Ryan?
definitely experienced it, like at places I've been where, especially when I was, when I was IT staff, it felt like the whole IT department was like carved out and not always told what the hell was going on, and so uh, and then that kind of attitude, then infected the IT leadership, where there would be a retreat, IT leadership retreat, and we would all know it was happening. They wouldn't have announced it, but someone would find out, and then we'd all know it was happening, but we would never know what they discussed, and that was a crappy place to work. But I do think there's an element of that, and kind of one of the things about I wonder how much of the focus on like the resume, being able to just list out the tech skills on the resume, how much of that is a function of like,
Yeah.
especially large companies have like gotten out of the business of training. Like there was, when I first started my career, we had a training department at the company that actually maintained the training materials for the core systems and the core business processes. And so there was like a formal curriculum you were offered when you came on board in certain roles. And all of that was cut over the course of time that I was there, to the point where, it's the same thing they're doing, like in the same vein that we're kind of turning our universities into glorified vocational schools, by pushing all of the career training out of the actual company and expecting people to come in already knowing the skills they need to succeed, or hiring people who we feel confident can figure it out with no help. Those are kind of I just wonder how much of it has to do with that too. And then as people trying to find jobs, our logical response is, well, I just need to have this list of all the things I can already do, or at least pretend I can do, in order to get this job, because I know that those are going to be valuable components of the job, and that they're not going to help me do it.
Yeah, and when the bot evaluates your resume,
That's a big part of it.
you get a higher score if you list all the languages they're looking for.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great comment here from. Oh, did I cut you off, Anne?
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay. From Jonathan Schlosser.
Jonathan, I think he was on last week, wasn't he?
Yes, I think there needs to be some context added here. Data science for the past few years has not been a well-defined field and was a catch-all for a number of things businesses wanted to pursue. So in one context, DS could be simple analytics. In another context, it could be developing novel deep learning pipelines. There's a massive spectrum, and from business to business, the data science expectations change. I think it's a fair expectation for a data science person to have a baseline business knowledge, but I don't think it's ultimately practical. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the beauty and the frustration of what we're all doing and trying to figure out here. So thanks for that, Jonathan.
I mean, a lot of this comes down to company size too, and complexity. Like, in my opinion, like there are a lot of companies that are way too small, that have too complex data technology stacks for what their company actually does. And in these cases, like, is where you see all of this silliness. Like, you don't need people to be that specialized. You have your Postgres expert and someone who knows TensorFlow and this, that, and the other. Right? You sell socks on Shopify. Like, you don't need all that type of stuff. You probably just need a generalist, and the generalist should know business. But at larger companies where there is perhaps a need for specialization, you can make a career out of being, the whatever person. Now, when times get tight and you've got, to what Eric referenced earlier, you've got the Bobs coming in, the consultants.
Mm-hmm.
What is it you do here? And that's kind of where we're at now with a lot of things. Like, if you're just saying, well, I do TensorFlow and blah, 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 like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's a tough spot to be in right now in a lot of companies. So the company size and complexity is definitely a large part of all of this as well. And I'm very like of the opinion that like a lot of companies are way too small or not complex enough to be doing all the crazy stuff they're doing right now. And this is not just the data world and tech world. You can say the same like on marketing teams. Like
marketing is so bloated. And I might make some enemies. A lot of marketing people aren't working that hard. Sorry.
A lot of salespeople aren't working that hard. A lot of people aren't working that hard.
It's funny, Lauren. It reminded me of many years ago. I was a sales engineer, right? Pre-sales software demo guy.
Yeah.
It wasn't called sales engineer then, but it's called it now. So
that's correct. And
it was just called pre-sales before.
And we somehow got an hour meeting with like the head of IT at Berkshire Hathaway.
Mm-hmm.
And we got on the phone with him and we're trying to pitch him on. He starts off by saying, I'm just going to tell you right away, the way we do things here is dead simple. All the companies we own, we give them an Excel template. We only care about the highest level revenue metrics. We do not want to know any of the details. We don't care. And they fill out the Excel template and they send it to us in a shared drive. And that's how Warren and the rest of the team analyze everything. And then we're on the call trying to convince him to buy this complicated BI suite. And he just kept chuckling at us. He's like, it all sounds great, but we just don't need that, Like we like to keep things simple. We don't want to drill into the details. And, Warren Buffett is not going to look at which transaction at See's Candies is driving whatever number. He doesn't care. He's just looking at the business results. And this is Berkshire Hathaway we're talking about, right? And on one way, you might look at that and say, I can't believe such an important company is using such primitive approaches. But it's really hard to argue with it.
Well, they also can make the market. They also own a bunch of Snowflake. We all know how the Snowflake ecosystem works. So, let somebody else fool around with all the partners and everything else. They'll just own the equity in Snowflake, and someone else can go use Snowflake in their own business. For anyone in our audience, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, one of the most successful public equity investors of all time. I want to say he's in his 90s, and him and who's his partner?
Charlie Munger, I think.
Yeah, him and Munger. You can go watch him on YouTube, and they have a lot of things to say that are pretty good. If you're not familiar, the Oracle of Omaha.
But to bring it back to the top, because we're going to wrap in a second here, talk about a business run with a business that never disconnected from reality, right? And that's probably why they've done so well. This has been awesome. Anne, thank you for coming on. You were so frank and open that you should have been wearing a tinfoil hat. So I just imagine you with one there. Join us anytime. Didn't get to all the comments, but people can keep chiming in there on YouTube or LinkedIn. Really appreciate all the wise thoughts. And any final words from anybody?
I'd say we've been talking about get the business skills. So Ryan, what's our joke about what's the top data book of 2023?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
By Dale Carnegie. Yeah. So if you saw some of the comments saying how do I make that switch? Like some of the other commenters had schedule the lunches, then also read about interpersonal relationships. I mean, that's if you're just a head in the code person, read about interpersonal relationships. That's step one, I'd say. So,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Sorry that we're quoting a bunch of white dudes, Dale Carnegie and Warren Buffett, but
really old ones too.
Yeah, legacy.
Yeah, still there's knowledge to be found. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can quote a 50-something stealth Latino. Go out and say hi to people.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, you gotta start somewhere.
It's the top data skill of 2023. Go say hi.
Go say hi.
Yeah.
You don't even have to be that good at it.
Yeah.
You just need to do it.
And then join if you need to practice, come join us on the next town hall, which I think we're going to do.
Yeah.
Week now.
You can just pop in.
It's so much fun. Awesome. All right. This is great. See everybody next time. Thank you so much. Check out the Super Data Brothers show. It's over on Ryan's page, I believe, on LinkedIn. Ryan or Eric, feel free to post the links to that. Sure. And Anne is also on LinkedIn, Anne Stoltzman. You feel free to post your link in the comments. And if you have anything to sell, you craft. You actually do craft, right? Is it crochet?
I knit. Yes.
You knit. Okay. Well, if
And
you want to
I'm
sell, if you want to sell your
If you want to
knitting,
knit a tinfoil hat, like we'll put it on the show.
You know,
Yeah.
there are metallic yarns, so I can.
Yeah.
love it. All right. Business is being started as we speak. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks. It's been great.